I stared at Jack, my husband of 15 years, wondering if I'd heard him correctly. "You want us to move in with your mother?" The words felt foreign on my tongue, like a phrase from a language I'd never learned. Jack's eyes darted away from mine, focusing on the framed photo of us on our wedding day. "It's just temporary, Claire. Mom's having a hard time since Dad passed. She needs us." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "And what about what we need, Jack? What about our plans?" He shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes about his indifference. "Plans change. Mom's alone now. It's the right thing to do." The right thing. How many times had I heard that phrase throughout our marriage? I bit back a bitter laugh. "And what does Susan think about this?" "She's thrilled," Jack said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Says it'll be like old times. Old times. When Jack was her perfect little boy, and I was just the interloper who'd stolen him away." I could already imagine Susan's critical gaze, her thinly veiled barbs about my shortcomings as a wife and daughter-in-law. "Jack, I don't think." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "It's decided, Claire. We're moving next week." I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. "Next week? But that's so soon. What about my job? Our house?" "You can commute," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "And we'll rent out the house. It'll be good for us, you'll see." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand how ridiculous this all sounded. But years of keeping the peace had trained me well. Instead, I nodded, feeling like a coward. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" Jack called after me. "For a walk," I said, not bothering to look back. The crisp autumn air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped outside. I walked aimlessly, my mind racing with all the implications of Jack's announcement. How had we gotten here? When had my opinions, my desires become so insignificant? Lost in thought, I nearly collided with my neighbor Sarah. "Whoa there, Claire," she said, steadying me. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just got some surprising news. Jack wants us to move in with his mother." Sarah's eyes widened. "Susan, the woman who called you a barren disappointment at your last Christmas dinner?" I winced at the memory. "That's the one." "Oh, honey," Sarah said, pulling me into a hug. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't seem to have much choice in the matter." Sarah pulled back, her hands on my shoulders. "There's always a choice, Claire. You just have to be brave enough to make it." As I walked home, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. I'd spent so long trying to be the perfect wife, to make everyone else happy. Maybe it was time to start thinking about my own happiness. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the unfamiliar car parked in our driveway. As I approached, I saw Jack emerge from the house, followed by a woman I'd never seen before. They were laughing, heads close together in conspiratorial intimacy. My heart stopped as I watched Jack lean in and kiss her cheek, his hand lingering on her waist. The woman climbed into her car and Jack waved goodbye, a smile on his face I hadn't seen in years. As the car pulled away, Jack turned and saw me standing there. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of panic. "Claire," he said, his voice strained, "I can explain." But in that moment I realized there was nothing left to explain. The perfect life I'd been desperately clinging to had been an illusion all along, and now, standing in the fading light of day, I knew that everything was about to change. The moving van pulled away, leaving me standing in Susan's driveway, surrounded by boxes and the suffocating weight of my new reality. Jack was already inside, probably basking in his mother's adoration. I took a deep breath and stepped through the front door, bracing myself for what lay ahead. "There you are, Claire." Susan's voice rang out, sharp as a knife. "I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind." I forced a smile, just making sure we didn't forget anything. Susan's eyes narrowed. "Well, don't just stand there. Start unpacking. I want this mess cleared up before dinner." As I lugged boxes upstairs, I caught snippets of Jack and Susan's conversation from the kitchen. Their laughter felt like a personal affront, a reminder of my outsider status in this house. "Claire?" Jack called. "Can you come down here for a sec?" I descended the stairs, my guard up. Jack and Susan were seated at the kitchen table, matching expressions of false concern on their faces. "Honey," Jack began, his tone sickeningly sweet, "Mom and I were talking, and we think it might be best if you take the guest room for now." I blinked, Sure, I'd misheard. Excuse me? Susan jumped in. It's just that Jack's old room is rather small for two, and well, with your difficulties, we thought you might appreciate the extra space. My difficulties. As if my struggle to conceive was a personal failing, a defect to be hidden away in the guest room. And where will you sleep, Jack? I asked, already knowing the answer. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. I'll take my old room. It'll be easier for work, you know? I bit my tongue, tasting blood. This was about more than sleeping arrangements. This was about erasing me, bit by bit, from their perfect family picture. Fine, I said, my voice eerily calm. I'll take the guest room. As I turned to leave, Susan called out, Oh, and Claire? Be a dear and start on dinner, won't you? I'm famished. That night, lying alone in the cold guest room, I replayed the scene I'd witnessed in our driveway. The woman, the kiss, Jack's panicked expression when he saw me. I'd been too shocked then to confront him, but now anger bubbled up inside me. I crept downstairs, intent on finally having it out with Jack. But as I approached his door, I heard hushed voices. You need to be more careful, Jack, Susan whispered. What if Claire had seen you? My breath caught in my throat. Don't worry, Mom, Jack replied. Claire doesn't suspect a thing. She's too busy trying to be the perfect wife to notice what's right in front of her. I stumbled back, my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Susan knew. She'd known all along about Jack's affair, and worse, she was helping him hide it. Rage, hot and fierce, coursed through me. I wanted to burst into the room, to scream and throw things, but a small, calculating voice in my head held me back. If I confronted them now, they'd only deny it. No, I needed proof. I needed to play their game better than they did. Back in the guest room, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. Claire? She answered, groggy with sleep. What's wrong? I need your help, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'm going to take down Jack and Susan, and I need you to be my alibi. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came back, fully alert. I'm listening. As I outlined my plan, a sense of purpose washed over me. For years, I'd let Jack and Susan dictate my life, my worth. But no more. They thought they had me cornered, isolated in this house of lies. But they'd underestimated me. Let them think I was the perfect, obedient wife. Let them believe I was clueless and weak. I'd play the part, all while gathering the evidence I needed to blow their carefully constructed world apart. The game was on, and this time I intended to win. The fertility clinic's waiting room was a study in quiet desperation. I sat alone, surrounded by couples holding hands and whispering encouragement. Jack had begged off, claiming an important meeting. I knew better now. Claire Thompson? The nurse's voice cut through my thoughts. I followed her to the examination room, my heart heavy. Dr. Patel greeted me with a sympathetic smile. I'm afraid I don't have good news, Claire, she said gently. The latest round of treatments hasn't been successful. I nodded, numb. How many times had I sat in this room hoping for a miracle? Have you and Jack considered other options? Dr. Patel asked. There are still avenues we could explore. I'll discuss it with him, I lied, knowing full well that Jack had lost interest in our fertility journey long ago. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A text from Susan. Dinner at 6. Don't be late. I arrived home to find Susan in the kitchen, a whirlwind of activity. There you are, she said, barely looking up. Start chopping those vegetables. Jack's bringing a guest. My stomach clenched. A guest? Yes, his new assistant. Amanda, I think her name is. Lovely girl. I nearly sliced my finger, my hand shaking with sudden realization. Amanda, the woman from the driveway. Oh, and Claire? Susan's voiced with false concern. You might want to freshen up. You look a bit worn. I bit back a retort and headed upstairs. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed older, tired. When had I become this shadow of myself? The sound of laughter drifted up from downstairs. I recognized Jack's voice, followed by a lilting female laugh that set my teeth on edge. I descended the stairs slowly, steeling myself. Jack stood in the living room, his arm casually draped over a young woman's shoulders. She was everything I wasn't. Young, vibrant, carefree. Claire! Jack called out too loudly. Come meet Amanda. She's been a godsend at the office. I shook Amanda's hand, noting how she leaned into Jack. It's so nice to finally meet you, she gushed. Jack talks about you all the time. Does he now? I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Throughout dinner, I watched Jack and Amanda, noting every shared glance, every accidental touch. Susan beamed at them, playing the perfect hostess. "So, Amanda," Susan said, refilling her wine glass, "do you plan on having children someday?" Amanda blushed. "Oh, I'd love to. I've always wanted a big family." "Unlike some people," Susan muttered, her eyes flicking to me. The room fell silent. I set down my fork, the clatter echoing in the sudden quiet. "I'm sorry, Susan," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Susan waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, nothing, dear. It's just, well, you've been trying for so long. Maybe it's time to accept that motherhood isn't in the cards for you." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I managed, fleeing to the kitchen. I gripped the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The kitchen door swung open, and Jack entered. "Claire, what's wrong with you?" he hissed. "You're embarrassing me." I turned to face him, years of pent-up anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "What's wrong with me? You bring your mistress to dinner and ask what's wrong with me?" Jack's face paled. "Keep your voice down," he warned. "It's not what you think." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "Tell me, Jack. Tell me I'm wrong." He opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to form the lie. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I'd spent years trying to be the perfect wife, enduring Susan's jabs, Jack's indifference, the painful fertility treatments. For what? For this farce of a family? I brushed past Jack, back into the dining room. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me expectantly. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice ringing clear. "I'm not pregnant. I'll never be pregnant. And you know what? I'm done trying." With that, I walked out of the house, leaving behind a stunned silence. As I stood in the driveway, the cool night air on my face, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. The game had changed, and I was finally ready to play by my own rules. I found myself at my mother's doorstep, tears streaming down my face. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, stroking my hair. "What's happened?" Inside, over a steaming mug of tea, I poured out everything. Jack's affair, Susan's cruelty, the failed fertility treatments. Mom listened, her face a mix of concern and barely contained anger. "Claire," she said when I'd finished, "why are you putting yourself through this?" I stared into my tea, searching for an answer. I wanted the family I never had growing up, the perfect marriage, the white picket fence, the whole package. Mom's eyes softened. "Oh, honey, is that what this has all been about?" She reached for an old photo album, flipping to a picture of us from years ago. There we were, just the 2 of us at my high school graduation, beaming at the camera. "Look at us," she said. "We might not have been the traditional family, but we were happy, weren't we?" I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "You don't need a man or a baby to complete you, Claire. You're already whole." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, washing away years of insecurity and doubt. I'd been so focused on creating the perfect family that I'd lost sight of what truly mattered, my own happiness and self-worth. "What do I do now?" I asked, feeling both liberated and terrified. Mom squeezed my hand. "You fight. Not for Jack or that sham of a marriage, but for yourself." The next morning, I returned to Susan's house with a renewed sense of purpose. I found Jack in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. "Where were you?" he demanded. I was worried sick. I almost laughed at the absurdity of his concern. "I needed some time to think," I said calmly, "and I've made a decision." Jack's eyebrows shot up. "Oh? I'm moving out," I stated, my voice steady. "This isn't working, Jack. It hasn't been for a long time." He set down his mug, his face a mask of disbelief. "You can't be serious. What about our family? Our future?" "What family?" I countered. "The one where you cheat on me and your mother covers for you? The one where I'm constantly reminded of my failures?" Jack's face paled. "You know about Amanda?" "Yes, I know. I'm not as blind as you think I am." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Claire, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Amanda, I promise." For a moment, I wavered. This was everything I'd wanted to hear for so long, but then I remembered my mother's words, and my resolve strengthened. "It's too late, Jack. I deserve better than this." As I turned to leave, Susan appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with anger. "You ungrateful little," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you?" I stood my ground, meeting her gaze. "You've done nothing but tear me down, Susan. But I'm not your punching bag anymore." I brushed past her, heading upstairs to pack my things. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I heard raised voices from below. Jack and Susan were arguing, their words muffled but their tones clear. Suddenly there was a crash, followed by silence. Alarmed, I crept down the stairs. In the living room, I found Jack on his knees, surrounded by shattered glass. Susan stood over him, her face a mask of cold fury. "You fool," she spat. "I told you to be careful, now look what you've done." Jack looked up, his eyes meeting mine. In that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before, fear. "Claire," he whispered, "there's something you need to know." I stood frozen, caught between the urge to flee and a desperate need to uncover the truth. Whatever Jack was about to reveal, I knew it would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room, ready to face whatever came next. I stood in the living room, my heart pounding as I waited for Jack to speak. Susan's eyes darted between us, a mix of fury and fear in her gaze. "Claire," Jack began, his voice trembling, I can't have children." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "What?" I whispered, struggling to comprehend. Jack couldn't meet my eyes. "I've known for years, long before we got married." The room spun around me as the implications sank in. All those fertility treatments, the disappointments, the blame I'd shouldered, it had all been for nothing. "You let me think it was my fault," I said, my voice rising. "You watched me go through treatment after treatment, knowing all along." Susan stepped forward, her face a mask of cold indifference. "It was for the best, Claire. We couldn't let people know Jack was defective." I recoiled at her words, disgust rising in my throat. "So you both decided to let me suffer instead, to make me feel like a failure?" Jack reached for me, but I jerked away. "I'm sorry, Claire. I was afraid you'd leave me if you knew the truth." A bitter laugh escaped me. "And this was better? Lying to me for years, making me think I was broken?" "You don't understand," Susan hissed. "Our family name, our reputation." "Your reputation?" I cut her off, fury building inside me. "Is that all you care about?" Suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind. Susan's smug face as she introduced Amanda at dinner. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "That's why you brought Amanda into our lives," I said, turning to Susan. "You were trying to get Jack an heir, weren't you? With or without my knowledge." The guilty look that passed between Jack and Susan confirmed my suspicions. I felt physically ill. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been planning this?" Jack's silence was answer enough. I turned to leave, unable to bear another moment in their presence. "Claire, wait," Jack called after me. "Please, we can work this out. We can adopt or—" I whirled around, years of pent-up anger and hurt pouring out. "Work what out, Jack?" "The years of lies, the manipulation, the fact that your mother was basically pimping you out to your assistant?" Susan gasped, affronted. "How dare you? Everything I've done has been for this family." "No," I said, my voice cold. "Everything you've done has been for yourself, for your precious reputation." I turned to Jack, seeing him clearly for the first time. "And you? You're no better. You were willing to let me believe I was the problem rather than face the truth." Jack's face crumpled. "I love you, Claire. Please don't go." For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, a part of me still longed for the life I'd dreamed of, the family I'd never had. But then I remembered my mother's words. I was already whole. "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this," I said softly. "It's not supposed to make you feel small and worthless." I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. "I'm leaving," I announced. "Not just this house, but this marriage. I deserve better than lies and manipulation." Susan sneered. "And where will you go? You have nothing without us." I met her gaze, standing tall. "I have myself, and that's more than enough." As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Sarah. "How'd it go? Do you need backup?" I smiled, realizing I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. With newfound determination, I typed my reply. "It's over. Can I crash at your place tonight? We have some planning to do." As I hit send, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of my story, not the end. I'd been staying at Sarah's for a week, plotting my next move when the call came. Jack's voice crackled through the speaker, urgent and pleading. "Claire, please, we need to talk. Mom's in the hospital." My first instinct was to hang up, but something in his tone gave me pause. What happened? She collapsed. The doctors, they're not sure. Please, Claire, I need you. Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing to meet him at the hospital. As I walked through the sterile corridors, my mind raced. Was this another manipulation? A ploy to get me back? I found Jack in the waiting room, his face pale and drawn. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable and lost. How is she? I asked, keeping my distance. Stable for now. They're running tests. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. Thank you for coming. We sat in uncomfortable silence until a doctor approached. Mr. Thompson, your mother is awake. She's asking for both of you. Surprised, I followed Jack to Susan's room. She lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and frailer than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes locked onto mine as we entered. Claire, she said, her voice weak. I need to tell you something. Jack tensed beside me. Mom, maybe now's not the time. No, Susan interrupted. She needs to know. I can't carry this anymore. I stepped closer, curiosity overriding my caution. What is it, Susan? She took a shaky breath. Jack's affair. It wasn't his idea. It was mine. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I pushed him into it, Susan continued, tears forming in her eyes. I thought if he got another woman pregnant, we could pass the child off as yours. Save the family name. I staggered back, feeling as if I'd been physically struck. You orchestrated all of this? Jack reached for me, his face a mask of shame. Claire, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up to her, should have told you the truth. But I was beyond hearing his apologies. Years of pain, humiliation, and self-doubt crashed over me like a tidal wave. Every snide comment, every accidental meeting with Amanda, every fertility treatment I'd endured, it had all been part of their sick plan. How could you? I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. How could you do this to me? Susan's face crumpled. I was trying to protect our family, our legacy. I never meant what? I cut her off, my voice rising. Never meant to destroy my self-esteem? Never meant to make me feel worthless and broken? Never meant for me to find out? Jack stepped between us. Claire, please, she's sick. We can talk about this later. But I was done waiting, done being silenced. No, we'll talk about it now. You both used me, manipulated me, lied to me for years. And for what? Your precious family name? I turned to Susan, years of pent-up anger pouring out. You know what, Susan? You didn't just fail to protect your family. You destroyed it. Congratulations. With that, I stormed out of the room, ignoring Jack's calls behind me. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, threatening to crush me entirely. But beneath the pain and anger, I felt something else stirring, a fierce determination. They had taken so much from me, but I refused to let them take anything more. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Everything okay? Need an escape plan? I smiled grimly, a plan forming in my mind. It was time to take back control, to show Jack and Susan exactly what I was capable of. I typed back, meet me at the house. It's time to end this, on my terms. As I left the hospital, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The final battle was coming, and this time, I was ready for war. The dining room buzzed with chatter as our friends gathered for what they thought was a simple dinner party. Little did they know, they were about to witness the implosion of my marriage. I moved through the room, a forced smile plastered on my face, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Jack hovered nearby, his eyes following me nervously. He knew something was off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Claire, darling. Susan's saccharine voice cut through the noise. She'd insisted on attending, despite her recent hospital stay. Everything looks lovely. I turned to her, my smile never wavering. Thank you, Susan. I'm so glad you could make it. As our guests took their seats, I caught Sarah's eye across the table. She gave me a subtle nod, reminding me of our plan. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Jack stood to make a toast, raising his glass. To friends, family, and new beginnings, he said, his eyes meeting mine in a silent plea. I let him finish, waiting for the perfect moment. As the clinking of glasses subsided, I slowly rose to my feet. I'd like to make a toast as well, I announced, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Jack's face paled. Claire, what are you doing? I ignored him, addressing our friends instead. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Your friendship has meant the world to me, especially during difficult times." A hush fell over the room. I could feel all eyes on me waiting. "You see," I continued, "Jack and I have been going through some challenges lately, fertility issues among other things." Susan shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Claire, perhaps this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time, Susan," I cut her off, my voice sharp. "After all, you've played such a crucial role in our marriage. Why don't you tell everyone about your brilliant plan?" Jack stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Claire, stop this, now." But I was beyond stopping. Years of pain and anger fueled my words. "Did you know that Jack can't have children? That all those fertility treatments I went through were for nothing?" Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Jack's face was ashen, his eyes pleading. "But that's not even the best part," I pressed on, my voice rising. "Tell them, Jack. Tell them about Amanda." "Who's Amanda?" someone asked. I laughed, a bitter sound. "Oh, just the woman Jack's been sleeping with. At his mother's suggestion, I might add." The room erupted into chaos. Friends looked between Jack and me, shock and disbelief on their faces. Susan attempted to interject, but I silenced her with a glare. "You see, Susan here thought it would be a great idea for Jack to get another woman pregnant, pass the baby off as mine to save the precious family name." Jack lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "Claire, that's enough." I wrenched away from him, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Jack, it's not nearly enough. For years, I've been manipulated, lied to, made to feel worthless. Well, I'm done." I turned to our stunned friends. "I'm sorry you all had to witness this, but I couldn't let their lies continue. I couldn't let them win." The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Jack stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and shame. Susan had her head in her hands, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As I looked around at the faces of our friends, some sympathetic, others horrified, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The truth was out. There was no going back now. "I think it's time for me to go," I said quietly, gathering my things. As I walked towards the door, I heard Jack's broken voice behind me. "Claire, please, don't leave." I paused, turning to face him one last time. "I'm not leaving, Jack, I'm escaping." With that, I stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind the shattered remains of my old life. As I walked away from the house, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it, on my own terms. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my new apartment as I sipped my coffee, savoring the quiet. It had been 3 months since the dinner party, 3 months of rebuilding my life piece by piece. The divorce papers sat on the coffee table, signed and ready to be filed. A knock at the door startled me from my reverie. I opened it to find Jack standing there, looking haggard and desperate. "Claire," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. We sat across from each other, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "I've left Susan's house," Jack began. "I've ended things with Amanda. I want to make this right." I studied him, searching for any trace of the man I'd once loved. "It's too late for that, Jack. You know that, don't you?" He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I know. I don't know how to live without you." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old longing, the desire to comfort him. But then I remembered all the lies, all the pain. "You'll learn," I said firmly, "just like I did." Jack's gaze fell on the divorce papers. "So this is really it, then?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. "It is. I hope you find happiness, Jack, but it won't be with me." As he left, I felt a chapter of my life closing. But instead of grief, I felt a surge of excitement for what lay ahead. Later that day, I met Sarah for lunch. She grinned as I approached, raising her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," she said. I clinked my glass against hers, smiling. "And to true friends." As we ate, Sarah leaned in conspiratorially. "So, have you thought about what's next? The world's your oyster now, Claire." I paused, considering. "You know, I think I might go back to school, finish that degree I put on hold when I got married." Sarah beamed. "That's my girl. Show them what you're made of." As we finished our meal, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Proud of you, sweetheart. Dinner tonight?" Warmth spread through my chest. Throughout this ordeal, my mother had been my rock, reminding me of the strength I'd inherited from her. That evening, as we sat in her cozy kitchen, Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "How are you really doing, Claire?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, considering the question. "I'm okay," I said slowly. "Better than okay, actually. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again." Mom nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You know, when your father left, I thought my world had ended, but it was just beginning. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find ourselves." Her words resonated deep within me. I thought of all the years I'd spent trying to fit into the mold of the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, how I'd lost myself in the process. "I think I'm ready to start living for myself," I said, surprised by the conviction in my voice. Mom smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "That's my brave girl." As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the journey. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. I thought of Jack, of Susan, of the life I'd left behind. There was sadness there, yes, but also a profound sense of freedom. I picked up a framed photo from my bedside table. Me at my college graduation, young and full of dreams. I traced my younger self's smile, remembering the hope and ambition I'd once had. "Time to dream again," I whispered to myself. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was older, wiser, with a few more lines around her eyes. But there was a spark there that I hadn't seen in years, a spark of possibility, of life yet to be lived. I smiled at my reflection, feeling a surge of excitement for the future. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready for it, ready to rediscover the woman I'd always been meant to be. As I drifted off to sleep, one thought echoed in my mind. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the beginning.
"Patty, I've always been telling you, haven't I? I wanted a son to carry on our family name, yet you gave birth to a girl. I don't need someone who's useless like you. Sign the divorce papers and get out of the house with your daughter."
One day, out of the blue, this was what Tony blurted out at my in-laws' house. In his right hand was the divorce paper, and he was holding his mistress on his left side. As I was dumbfounded by his unbelievable claim, his mistress added seriously, "Hello, I'm Kristen. I'm carrying Tony's baby, and of course, the baby's a boy. We've already confirmed the gender with tests, so I'll be the one to make Tony happy. Please, don't interfere with us anymore. Got it?" It was as if I was being painted as the villain. Then my mother-in-law, Laura, delivered the final blow. "I was completely deceived by you, Patty. I feel sorry for Tony, so never show your face to us again." There was not a single reasonable person around here. I couldn't understand how they could say such heartless words like that. While glancing at the entrance, I was utterly shocked, but I wasn't surprised or panicked about the situation. "What are you all even talking about?" "I have been single for a week now. I'm no longer your wife, Tony, so do as you please. Sarah and I will leave."
"Patty, have you lost your mind? When did we get divorced? The divorce is supposed to happen right now."
"You're the one who lost your mind, Dad. We've already moved to a new house, so bye."
"What are you talking about, Sarah? You guys are really stupid."
My husband laughed loudly enough for it to be heard outside as he pointed at us. He may be laughing now, but that won't last long. He has no clue on what's about to happen. I will never forgive my husband. He will surely regret hurting our daughter. As my husband continued to laugh, I calmly began to speak. "The stupid one here is you, Tony. I already filed the divorce papers. You just had no clue about it."
Being pushed to the edge really does make people do unexpected things, huh? I never thought you would espouse such nonsense, but I guess this is your true nature. I feel way better knowing I'm divorcing a liar like you.
My husband, along with Laura and Kristen, looked down on me with contempt. "Really, why did I ever approve of such a foolish daughter-in-law like you? I really want to punch my past self. I wasted my precious son's time. The biggest sin of my life. The only comfort is that you're about to be discarded right now. So just Get out, loser. Oh, Laura, you and Tony are too kind. How could you just listen to her? I definitely made the right choice in choosing Tony. He's such a compassionate man. Patty, stop lying and let Tony go. It's for your own good. Their smirks were exactly like those evil witches in fairy tales. The heart is revealed through actions, and the ability to upset people with just a laugh is, in a way, a talent. But where there is evil, there is also justice. From now on, I will be the one to judge this evil. They will all regret what they've done. I displayed a video on my smartphone and confronted the three. Do you recognize this?
A video. No. Footage from a camera? What about it?
Oh, isn't this Tony's room? Why do you have footage of Tony's room on your smartphone? Do they really not understand anything? For people who call others stupid, their brains don't seem to be very sharp. That's exactly why they engage in immoral acts like infidelity so easily and even condone it. At the moment, it all made sense to me. I decided to reveal the truth to the three of them. This is footage from a hidden camera. I have been secretly monitoring you, Tony. I installed a camera in your room. So with that, I found out about your mistress and the pre-filled divorce papers.
What? You installed a hidden camera in my room?
That's why I secretly took out the divorce papers while you were away and submitted them. If you think I'm lying, why don't you go check it? There's nothing left in that drawer. Tony returned from his room half in disbelief, but when he came back, his face was pale. He seemed to have recognized the truth of my words. Laura and Kristen also lost their smiles when they saw his state. I can't believe it. She already knew.
Well, I'm surprised, but this is convenient, isn't it? It saved me the trouble of submitting them. Kristen, let's remarry right now. Nothing can stop us now.
That's right. When you think about it, there's nothing bad about this. It just sped up the process of getting rid of a useless daughter-in-law like her. This woman couldn't get pregnant with a son anyway. She was never right for my precious Tony. This is a chance for Tony to restart his life. Laura laughed loudly. As a mother myself, I understand the feelings of a parent who loves their child, but even then, the love she has for her son seems a bit too much. Certainly, my husband had taken over the family business after his father passed away, and he probably earned more than the average person. I knew he had worked hard. After all, we were married. But no matter how adorable a parent finds their outstanding child, it doesn't justify mistreating their spouse. The harsh words thrown at me by Laura from the time we were married are a bitter memory I wish I could forget. It has been truly difficult. My only ally is my daughter, Sarah. She has even been ignored and mistreated by them. I can never forgive them. Only I can protect my daughter. I will make them pay for how they treated us. I pulled out a small piece of paper from the drawer and presented it to the three. Tony and his mother looked at the paper with puzzled expressions.
What is this scrap of paper? A business card?
Hansen Corporation's CEO, Robert Gale? Isn't Hansen Corporation a major client of your company, Tony?
Yeah. Why do you have the business card of the CEO of such a big company? You shouldn't have any chance to interact with a CEO like him.
The two of them spoke as they pleased. Do they think I'm some kind of punching bag? Unfortunately, I'm human and sharp words do hurt. But they seem unaware of this. While that was happening, Kristen looked pale. Noticing her turning pale, Tony spoke up.
Kristen, what's wrong? You look pale.
Of course she would. Wouldn't you be shocked if someone suddenly pulled out your own father's business card?
Huh? Father? What are you talking about?
Seeing my husband's visibly confused expression, I couldn't help but smile. He really knew nothing. Seizing the moment, I raised my voice and stated clearly, Your mistress is the daughter of your client's CEO.
What? No way. Such a perfect coincidence like that can't be true. You must have gone crazy.
I always thought you were a worthless daughter-in-law, but now you're just a jerk trying to frame people. I wonder what kind of upbringing produces such a worthless person like you. I'd really like to ask your parents about this." I was infuriated by what Laura said, which not only insulted me, but my parents as well. She really insults people as easily as breathing. My daughter puffed up her cheeks in indignation as well. Seeing her like that relaxed me a bit. Emboldened by the comments of Tony and his mother, Kristen confronted me with a defiant expression. "I agree with Tony and Laura. I don't care if he's the CEO of a big company or whatever. I've never met or heard of such a person. Don't make up someone's family out of nowhere, you jerk."
Exactly. I have met Mr. Gale because of my position, but he looked nothing like Kristen. Though I admit judging Kristen as a CEO's daughter makes sense, since she is elegant and intelligent. She's totally on a different level than you.
Right. She must have been raised by wonderful parents unlike you. That also means Sarah's future is predictable, even though she's Tony's daughter with a mother like you. Laura glaringly sent a contemptuous look towards my daughter. Not to be outdone, my daughter glared back fiercely. Enraged, I slammed the papers I had prepared hard onto the table.
What now? Robert Gale? Christian Gale? Adopted?
This is Mr. Gale's family registry. It proves the identities of Mr. Gale, his wife, and their unmarried child. As written here, Kristen is Mr. Gale's adopted daughter, which is why she doesn't resemble him.
What? Why do you have Mr. Gale's family registry?
Because Mr. Gale and I have a cooperative relationship. After I learned of your affair, I tried to reach out to him. Mr. Gale kindly entrusted me with this family registry. Tony then raised his voice.
What a joke. He's the CEO of a big company. You can't just meet him that easily. That family registry must be fake.
Now you've even resorted to faking documents. What a hopeless woman. Did you think we were so dumb as to be deceived by fake documents like this? You're gravely mistaken. Don't lump us in with someone as dumb as you. The stupid ones here are you guys. Faking official documents is a crime called forgery of official documents, punishable by 1 to 10 years in prison. I wouldn't commit such a crime just for this. If I got arrested, Sarah would suffer.
Then why are these documents here? You must have prepared these to confuse us.
He seemed desperate to deny any relationship between Mr. Gale and Kristen. Clearly, the idea of his mistress being the daughter of a client's CEO was unthinkable. People tend to shut out information that's inconvenient to them. But that's fine. Whether they face it or not, they're doomed for life. If you think they're fake, that's fine. I'm just letting you know the facts. My firm stance began to change my husband and Laura's attitude. Their smiles vanished and they began to tremble. Tony turned back to Kristen.
Kristen, just to make sure, tell me. You weren't deceiving me, right?
Kristen shook her head vigorously. That's impossible. Why would I lie to the person I love? Mr. Gale is a stranger to me. I had a child with you because I love you. I would never lie about this. I couldn't help but give a grand round of applause to Kristen's response. Well done, Kristen. You've shown your unwavering will. You truly love Tony, don't you? I'm moved. So I have a reward for you. Just wait a moment. I hurried out of the living room with puzzled looks stabbing my back. Giving no care to that, I stepped outside and quickly returned with the reward. Sorry for the wait. Here's your reward. What? No way! Kristen's eyes widened in shock as she backed away. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Gale had been waiting outside all along. Furthermore, the door was intentionally left ajar. When Tony presented me with the divorce papers today, I glanced at the entrance with dismay, aware of Mr. Gale's presence. Tony straightened up immediately and greeted as soon as he saw Mr. Gale.
Oh, Mr. Gale, it's been a while. Don't worry about formalities. They mean nothing to me.
Mr. Gale returned Tony's greeting with a cold gaze. A deep wrinkle formed between his eyebrows and his veins popped out.
I've been waiting outside the door, and oh, what an interesting conversation I've heard. Tony, I've come to understand your true nature very well. It's been an enlightening experience. To think that there are people who speak such foul words in this world. Don't you think so? Well, you see...
Knowing that Mr. Gale had heard everything, Tony seemed unable to come up with any excuses. He just stood there, dripping with cold sweat and looking down. Mr. Gale also glanced at Kristen, whose shoulders jolted up. Don't you two feel ashamed of what you've done? There are things one shouldn't do as a human. Marriage and love are different. Once you've sworn eternal love, you must at least fulfill the basic responsibilities. Apologize to Patty immediately. His angry voice filled the room. Tony and Kristen shrank back, but Laura stood her ground defiantly. If eternal love is so important, then Tony and Kristen are deeply in love too. Patty no longer loves Tony. After all, she was the one who filed for divorce. Therefore, it is only natural for two people in love to be together. There's nothing wrong with that.
That is an unbearable justification. Yes, it is joyful when two people in love come together. However, both parties being single is the basic condition. Moreover, there's not only Patty, but also Sarah involved. Disposing of someone because they can't have a son? What era do you think you're living in? If you are living in the present, please update your mindset. This is just unacceptable. At Mr. Gale's anger, Laura ran out of words to respond. The room fell silent. There was a reason for his anger. In fact, Mr. Gale's wife was infertile and unable to have children. There are still people with outdated mindsets like Tony and Laura, but there are also many who want to have children but can't. Pregnancy and childbirth are sacred, and we mustn't forget that. Mr. Gale could not tolerate his family hurting others for selfish reasons like wanting a son for heir. Tony and Laura were silenced by Mr. Gale, but Kristen's eyes burned with anger. She started to argue back to Mr. Gale directly. You preach as if you're some kind of saint, but you're selfish too. You adopted me because you couldn't have your own kids, right? Whether it was good for me didn't matter. That was just adults making decisions for their own convenience. Kristen clenched her fists and yelled with all her might. I don't know the details, but Mr. Gale is a strict man who apparently didn't spoil Kristen with money or material things. This may be why Kristen feels unloved by her father, as they aren't blood related. Tony and Laura seemed confused as the divorce turmoil had suddenly turned into an argument between Mr. Gale and Kristen. They looked at each other uneasily. Kristen, unable to control her emotions, continued to lash out at Mr. Gale. You just adopted me for Mom's sake, right? Because she wanted a child? Because she was important to you. I was only being used to satisfy someone else. I'm just a tool to you. Everyone thinks they can just use me. Although I haven't known Mr. Gale long, he seems like a genuinely good person. Even as an outsider, I think Kristen is wrong, but Mr. Gale quietly listened to her. What? Aren't you going to say anything? Or do you think what I'm saying isn't even worth responding to? That's not it. It's not that. I'm actually happy.
Happy? Are you crazy? Or is that some kind of weird hobby?
It's the first time you've spoken honestly to me. You've always been a well-behaved child who didn't need much attention. I used to think you were just a quiet kid, but now I see that's not the case. You must have endured a lot on your own. His eyes softened as he spoke. Kristen's shoulders trembled slightly. Yes, I have been strict with you, that's true. I won't make excuses. But it was because I love you. They say the opposite of love is indifference, right? I wouldn't bother saying anything if I didn't care.
Stop it! I can't believe you're saying this now. I've never been loved by my family. Enough, Kristen. You don't understand anything. Even as an outsider, I can see that Mr. Gale cares about you. Yet you just deny it one-sidedly. Right now, you just look like a child throwing a tantrum. I couldn't help but intervene. As a parent myself, I couldn't stand to listen any longer. Being a parent is harder than most can imagine. You can't just quit midway. There's no guarantee of a return for all the effort you pour into your children. Sometimes what you do for their sake can backfire. Even after lovingly raising them, in the end, you have to let go. It's a tough job, isn't it? But the reason parents can keep going is solely the love and responsibility they feel for their children. It's clear that Mr. Gale has more than enough of both. But Kristen seems too stubborn to see the truth right now.
Don't lecture me when you were just dumped by your husband. You're just clinging to him because you can't do anything else. Everything has been taken away from you, and you're just going to keep falling into misery.
The conversation shifted towards me, and seeing that it was their chance, Tony and Laura regained their momentum.
That's right. I don't know much about Kristen's past, but what's certain is that she'll be happy from now on because she's remarrying me.
Yes, Tony is a wonderful man. He was too good for someone like you. Now he can finally start a life with a woman who matches him. I'm looking forward to it. A child's happiness is a parent's happiness.
What they were saying wasn't wrong, but coming from Laura, it sounded insincere. My daughter seemed to think the same, giving her grandmother a cold look. Despite the three showing no signs of remorse, I boldly declared to them, I don't mind. Remarry or do whatever you like, but remember, you'll be the ones regretting it. That's for certain. My husband and his mother swallowed nervously, but still arrogantly took Kristen's hand.
You're complaining it's so lame. Just keep on talking, loser.
Don't bother contacting us anymore. We four, including Tony and Kristen's baby, will live happily together. Goodbye, Dad. I don't think we'll see each other again. Don't expect to see your grandson.
With those final words, the three left the house. After the storm had passed, a silence remained. Mr. Gale was the first to speak.
Patty, Sarah, I'm truly sorry for the rude things my daughter has said.
Please don't apologize. This isn't your fault, Mr. Gale, and it's okay.
What do you mean by it's okay?
Mr. Gale looked puzzled, but I gave him a meaningful smile. There are facts that none of you know yet. They should come to light soon enough. At my words, both Mr. Gale and Sarah could only tilt their heads in confusion. A few days later, I was waiting for a call from my husband at a certain place. It's one of the most luxurious apartments in LA. I quite like the view. It's outstanding. Even if the wait gets long, I doubt I'll get bored. While I was drinking my second cup of coffee, the long-awaited call finally came. I answered with an exceptionally cheerful voice, and then heard my husband's very flustered voice. What's the matter? Calling all of a sudden like this? It's only been a few days since you cut ties with me.
Help me, Patty. Kristen has gone missing.
Oh, really? That sounds serious. But if that's the case, shouldn't you report it to the police? I'm not in the business of finding people, you know.
No, Patty, it's not just that she's gone missing. My ATM cards and credit cards have disappeared too. She had asked me about the pins before, saying we should share important information in case of emergencies. And now my money is being withdrawn like crazy. I don't know what to do.
My husband's words were all over the place, and I just had to laugh. Meanwhile, he continued to rant about something dumb. He seemed utterly clueless and confused. After a good laugh, I finally decided to tell him the truth. You know, Kristen has another man, not just you. She actually has a real boyfriend.
What are you talking about all of a sudden? I'm already so upset. Don't confuse me more.
It's true, and if you want to know, the baby in Kristen's belly isn't yours either.
That's a lie. It has to be. You just have a bad personality, giving me wrong information and looking down, laughing at me like that. You're the worst. I've lost all respect for you.
My husband was so upset he started crying. So I guess Tony and Kristen's romance didn't last long. Is his mother worried? Of course, for me, everything's going according to plan. I'll show you proof that what I'm saying is true. Here's a question for you. Where am I right now?
How should I know? Just go to hell.
Wow, that hurt. But the one who's really going to hell isn't me, it's you. Anyway, the correct answer is right here. I switched to a video call to show my surroundings. Immediately, I could hear my husband scream from the smartphone.
Kristen, why are you with Patty? You two were conspiring against me?
Kristen remained silent, looking down. That's understandable. After all, I now have leverage of her. Tony's not just Kristen here. Let me introduce you to Alex, Kristen's real boyfriend. As I introduced him, Alex appeared on the screen. Yes, I had already made contact with Kristen's actual boyfriend. We had just stormed into Kristen's house together. A louder scream came from the other end.
You bastard. How dare you seduce my Kristen? You have my ATM cards and credit cards, don't you? Give them back now, along with the money you stole. I must say, I didn't know anything about this. Not about your existence, nor the ATM cards or credit cards. I like an explanation about this situation too. Kristen?
Alex glared sharply at Kristen as she kept on looking down.
Kristen? What is going on? Who is this man? Your real boyfriend? That's a lie, right? We loved each other so much. Tell me the truth.
Shut up.
What? I can't hear you.
I said shut up. You delusional jerk. What do you mean we loved each other? I never loved you, not even once. It was all in your head. I was only with you for the money, and you easily cheated on me when you had a wife, you jerk.
My husband was so shocked he could hardly close his mouth. After a long silence, he suddenly slumped over the table and started crying. He continued to cry out like a child, unable to have a proper conversation. Meanwhile, Alex was grilling Kristen, and she fired back in a hostile way, making things worse. I felt the urge to go home and relax over coffee with Sarah, but I couldn't just abandon the job halfway. Since there was no more need for me to say, I quietly left my seat and moved to the hallway. All that was left was to patiently wait for my husband to recover. After he had cried enough, Tony finally raised his swollen face. Just when I thought we could wrap things up, he made a surprising suggestion.
Let's start over, Patty. We can still go back to how we were.
What? What are you talking about?
Taking care of Sarah alone must be financially difficult for you, right? Besides, isn't it better for the family to be together? Mom will surely understand.
How conveniently he speaks of family now. A word that should be warm and loving has turned vile because of him. I laughed at him with all the scorn I could muster. No, I'll pass. Do you have any idea how much you've made me suffer? And it's not just about me. What angers me most is that you hurt Sarah. I never thought you would neglect your own daughter after an affair.
I just really wanted a son. There was no other intention, and it's not too late. If we love each other again, a son will come soon.
Please stop saying such disgusting things. There's not an ounce of love left for you and me. I can't even stand to breathe the same air as you, let alone touch you. And you keep talking about a son. But isn't that completely unnecessary now?
What do you mean?
Your misconduct is already well known among our company and business partners. It's being viewed as a problem everywhere, so it's only a matter of time before our existing deals are canceled. Soon you'll struggle with cash flow and the business will become unmanageable. If the company falls apart, what's the use of an heir?
That's...
After that, my husband was silent and seemed stunned. I finished with all the sarcasm I could muster. The only family you have left is your mother. Make sure to get along with her. I pressed the end call button and left Kristen's house. That was the last time I saw my husband. The clear blue sky seemed even more beautiful today. After that, my husband was shunned by everyone from his company and business partners. As expected, the company faced financial difficulties and quickly decided to fold. Tony and Laura's once strong bond took a hit when they started struggling with money, and now they're stuck in a cycle of arguing. The industry spread rumors about my husband, and he has no prospects for re-employment. Laura has never worked a part-time job, so she can hardly start working now, and does nothing but complain at home. My husband manages to get by on day labor, but his standard of living continues to decline. Both he and his relationship with his mother got worse, and it seems they will lead a difficult life forever. For those who saw their child as a mere tool, this was a fitting end. Meanwhile, Kristen did give birth safely, but eventually broke up with Alex, her real boyfriend. Perhaps Alex was a decent man. If suddenly you find out your girlfriend was cheating and stole from another, it's normal to want to avoid getting involved in that mess. While he's someone I don't really know, I do hope he finds happiness. After breaking up with Alex, Kristen, who has never worked properly, has no choice but to rely on her father, Robert. But being a strict man, both to himself and others, Robert did not coddle her, but rather pushed her away. Of course, this isn't to say he abandoned her. Robert loves Kristen, which is why he wants her to acknowledge her mistakes, reflect, and live an honest life. I am indebted to Robert as well. I can only hope that some of his wishes reach her. As for me, I now live peacefully with my daughter. While we aren't rich, living without fear of living with toxic family members is truly comfortable. I want to give my daughter all the attention she missed out on. Years later, I was lucky enough to get remarried with my current husband and was blessed with a son. Looking at our son, I am reminded that there are people who can't have kids, despite their desires, and that pregnancy and childbirth are sacred things. These are things I must never forget. Going forward, I would cherish the miracle of my children's birth and vow to find happiness with my new family.
I never thought my marriage would unravel because of a piece of paper, but that's exactly how it started. My name is Harper, and until last Tuesday, I believed I had the kind of life people dream about: a loving husband, a charming townhouse in Boston's Back Bay, and a future full of promise. Amazing how quickly perfect can turn to poison. I was sorting through the mail that afternoon the way I always did when an ivory envelope caught my eye. Paper was expensive, the kind that feels like silk between your fingers. It was addressed to my husband, Ethan, but what made me pause was the handwriting, delicate cursive that looked more like artwork than letters. No return address. Anything interesting? Ethan called from his home office upstairs. The sound of his voice made me jump, and I nearly dropped the envelope. Just bills and junk, I answered, hating how my voice wavered. In our 3 years of marriage, I'd never once opened his mail. But something about that envelope made my stomach twist. I heard his footsteps on the stairs and quickly shuffled the envelope to the bottom of the pile. Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking exactly like the successful businessman he was. Perfectly pressed shirt, designer watch, that confident smile that had first drawn me to him at a mutual friend's gallery opening. "You okay? You look pale," he said, crossing the room to kiss my forehead. "Just tired. The bookstore was crazy today." I forced a smile, acutely aware of the envelope burning a hole in the stack of mail. "How about pizza for dinner?" He checked his watch. "Can't tonight, sweetheart. Mother's hosting that charity thing at the house, remember? We need to be there by 7. Of course. Another Caldwell family obligation. I'd forgotten about Eleanor's latest fundraiser, probably because I'd been trying to. My mother-in-law had a way of making me feel like a charity case herself, even after 3 years. "Right," I said. "Let me just change in." "Actually, why don't you skip this one?" Ethan interrupted, loosening his tie. "You've been working so hard lately. Take the evening off, relax." Something in his tone made me look up sharply. He'd never suggested I skip a family event before. In fact, Eleanor would usually call personally to ensure my attendance. "Are you sure? Won't your mother mind?" "I'll handle Mother." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's just boring donor stuff anyway. You'd be miserable." I watched him head upstairs to change, that ivory envelope suddenly feeling like a lead weight in my hands. When I heard the shower start, I did something I never thought I would do. I opened it. Inside was a single card, the same creamy color as the envelope. The message was simple: same time, same place. Don't keep me waiting again. My hand shook as I read it twice more. The implications were clear, but my brain refused to process them. This had to be a mistake, a mix-up, anything but what it seemed. I heard the shower stop and quickly resealed the envelope as best I could, slipping it back into the pile. When Ethan came down 20 minutes later in his best suit, I was sitting on the couch pretending to read. "Sure you don't mind?" he asked, grabbing his keys. "Go," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Have fun." He kissed me goodbye, and I watched through the window as he pulled away in his Mercedes. As soon as his taillights disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my phone and pulled up my best friend Lily's number. My finger hovered over the call button. The thing about perfect lives is that they're like beautiful houses. Sometimes the prettiest facades hide the worst damage. I had a choice to make. I could pretend I never saw that note and keep living in my perfect house of cards, or I could start looking for cracks in the foundation. I pressed call. Lily's words from our late-night phone call still echoed in my head as I watched Ethan getting ready for work the next morning. Trust your gut, Harper. When have your instincts ever been wrong? Problem was, my gut was telling me things I didn't want to hear. "You're up early," Ethan commented, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. There was a slight edge to his voice, probably because I'd barely spoken 2 words to him since he'd returned from Eleanor's charity event last night. Couldn't sleep. I sipped my coffee, studying him over the rim of my mug. How was the fundraiser? Same as always. Mother cornered every wealthy widow in Boston. He checked his phone, frowning. Speaking of Mother, she wants us over for dinner tonight. My stomach clenched. Tonight? But it's Wednesday. We never do family dinner on Wednesdays. She's insisting. Says she has something important to discuss. He wouldn't meet my eyes, still staring at his phone. I told her we'd be there at 7. You didn't think to check with me first? He finally looked up, irritation flashing across his face. Since when do you have other plans on Wednesday nights? That's not the point, Ethan. I set my mug down harder than necessary. You've been making all these decisions lately without even asking me. The charity event last night, now this dinner. What's really bothering you, Harper? He stepped closer, his cologne, different from his usual, making me feel slightly nauseated. Because this doesn't feel like it's about dinner with Mother. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted. I have to go. Early meeting. With whom? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He paused at the door, jaw tightening. Clients, Harper. That's what businessmen do. They meet with clients. After he left, I sat at our kitchen island, staring at nothing. 3 years ago, I'd fallen in love with Ethan's confidence, his easy charm. Now those same qualities felt like walls keeping me out. My phone lit up with a text from Eleanor. Darling, looking forward to dinner tonight? Wear something appropriate. I could practically hear her voice, dripping with polite disdain. In Eleanor's world, appropriate meant designer labels and family heirlooms, not the vintage dresses I loved from my bookstore salary days. I was about to reply when another text came through, this one from Ethan's Aunt Vivian. Coffee at Lardison in an hour? Need your book recommendations. Winky face. Vivian had always been different from the rest of the Caldwells. Where Eleanor wielded sophistication like a weapon, Vivian's warmth felt genuine. Plus, she was the family gossip. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. Lardison was busy when I arrived, but I spotted Vivian immediately, her silver hair elegant against her coral blazer. She waved me over, 2 lattes already waiting. Harper, darling. She hugged me tight, then held me at arm's length. You look tired. Trouble sleeping. Just work stress, I lied, settling into my chair. She stirred her latte. Nothing to do with Eleanor's sudden Wednesday dinner plans? I tried to keep my face neutral. You know about that? Oh, I know many things. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Like the fact that Celeste Moore is back in town. The name hit me like a slap. Celeste Moore. The gorgeous brunette who'd been at every Caldwell event until about 4 years ago, right before I met Ethan. She'd vanished so completely I'd almost forgotten about her. What does that have to do with anything? Vivian's eyes softened with something that looked dangerously like pity. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But if I were you, I'd pay very close attention at dinner tonight. My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. Might be late to Mother's. Meet you there. I showed Vivian the message. She read it, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Remember, Harper. In this family, nothing is ever quite what it seems. As I drove home, my mind raced. The ivory envelope. The mysterious meetings. Celeste's return. Felt like pieces of a puzzle were floating just out of reach, waiting to form a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. 7 o'clock couldn't come fast enough. Eleanor's dinner turned out to be anything but dinner. I sat alone at her mahogany dining table for 45 minutes before my mother-in-law finally emerged from her study. Perfectly coiffed and utterly unapologetic. Oh, darling. Has Ethan not arrived yet? She didn't wait for my answer, pouring herself a generous glass of wine. He just texted, caught up at the office. Such a dedicated worker, my son. I gripped my water glass tighter. You said this dinner was important, that you had something to discuss. Did I? Eleanor settled into her chair, studying me over the rim of her wine glass. Well, since you're here, we might as well talk about the Foundation's upcoming gala. The seating arrangements are proving quite challenging. My phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. Sorry, sweetheart. Emergency meeting running late. Don't wait up. Something snapped inside me. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need to use the restroom. Instead of heading to the powder room downstairs, I climbed the familiar stairs to Ethan's old bedroom. Now his home office when he worked from his mother's house. The door was unlocked. They never expected me to snoop. I was the good daughter-in-law after all. The grateful scholarship girl who'd married up. I found what I was looking for in his suit jacket pocket, hung carelessly over his chair, a hotel key card for the Four Seasons. The same hotel mentioned in hushed conversations I'd pretended not to hear, in texts I'd glimpsed over his shoulder. My hands shook as I took a photo of the key card with my phone. As I slipped it back into his pocket, something else caught my eye, a receipt from the hotel's restaurant. 2 cocktails, dinner for 2, dated last night. During Eleanor's charity event. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly moved to the hallway bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. When I returned downstairs, Eleanor was on the phone. Yes, darling, she's still here, she was saying. No, I haven't, of course not. She noticed me and quickly ended the call. That was Ethan, she said smoothly. He's worried about you driving home alone so late. Shall I have Harrison bring the car around? I smiled, channeling every lesson in poise she'd ever given me. Actually, I think I'll wait for Ethan at the hotel. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows rose slightly. Hotel. The Four Seasons. That's where his emergency meeting is, right? The flash of panic in her eyes confirmed everything. 20 minutes later, I sat in my car across from the hotel, watching the entrance. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to drive away, pretend I'd never seen the key card or the receipt. Pretend I didn't know exactly what I'd find if I walked through those doors. Then I saw them. Ethan emerged first, his tie loosened, hair slightly mussed. She followed a minute later, Celeste Moore, exactly as Vivian had warned. She was even more beautiful than I remembered from those old family photos, her dark hair falling in perfect waves, her red dress a splash of color against the night. I watched them share a lingering kiss before parting ways. Watched my husband straighten his tie, check his reflection in a window, and head toward his car. Watched him become the man I thought I knew again. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Meeting running longer than expected. Staying at Mother's tonight. I started my car, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught sight of Eleanor's driver, Harrison, parked discreetly across the street. Of course she'd had me followed. Of course she'd known. I drove straight to Lily's apartment, my mind already racing ahead to what came next. Because this wasn't just about Ethan's betrayal anymore. This was about 3 years of condescension, of subtle manipulations, of being made to feel grateful for crumbs of affection from the mighty Caldwell family. They thought I was weak, compliant, perfect, quiet wife who would accept whatever scraps of truth they deigned to throw her way. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lily's apartment became my war room. After 3 sleepless nights of planning, I finally made the call I'd been dreading. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Harper Monroe? It's been 10 years? Hello, Jack. I twisted the wedding ring on my finger. I need your help. Jack Lawson had been the smartest kid in our high school until he dropped out senior year to help support his family. Now he was one of Boston's most discreet private investigators. And more importantly, he had no connections to the Caldwell family. Meet me at Cafe Luna in an hour, he said. And Harper? Bring cash. Cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Jack hadn't changed much, still had that sharp look in his eyes that made you feel like he could see right through you. He listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. The letter, the hotel, Celeste. You sure you want to pull this thread? He asked when I finished. Rich families like the Caldwells, they've got ways of making problems disappear. I'm already disappearing, I said. I need to know the truth. He nodded, sliding a contract across the table. 3 days. $5,000. I'll find out what your husband's really up to. I handed him an envelope of cash, nearly my entire savings from before my marriage. There's something else. I need you to look into Celeste Moore's history with the family. She vanished 4 years ago, right before I met Ethan. I need to know why. Careful, Jack warned. Sometimes the truth's worse than not knowing. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed. Ethan, where are you? Mother's trying to reach you about the charity board meeting. I texted back that I was at work, the lie coming easily now. When I looked up, Jack was studying me. You're still living with him? If I leave now, I'll never know what really happened. I stood up. 3 days, Jack. That evening, I played my part perfectly. I sat through dinner with Ethan, nodding at his stories about work. I didn't flinch when he kissed my cheek, even though his cologne still carried traces of her perfume. But at midnight, my phone lit up with a text from Jack. Found something. Meeting tomorrow, same place, 8 a.m. Bring your laptop. Joy. When I arrived at the cafe the next morning, Jack was already there, looking grim. Before I show you this, he said, you need to understand something. This goes deeper than just an affair. He pulled out his tablet, showing me financial records, emails, photos. My hand shook as I scrolled through them. Celeste Moore didn't just disappear 4 years ago, Jack explained. She was paid to disappear. $2 million transferred from a Caldwell family trust. The same trust that's been bleeding money ever since. I don't understand. Look at the dates. He pointed to a series of transactions. The payments started again 3 months ago, right around the time she came back. My stomach lurched as the pieces started falling into place. She's blackmailing them, and your husband's been embezzling from his own family's foundation to pay her off. Jack leaned back. Question is, what does she know that's worth destroying a marriage over? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A text from Vivian. Need to see you. Urgent. Come to my house now. I showed Jack the message. He frowned. Be careful. The aunt might seem friendly, but she's still a Caldwell. I gathered my things, my mind racing. Send everything to my secure email. And Jack? Keep digging into what happened 4 years ago. Whatever Celeste is holding over them, that's when it started. As I drove to Vivian's, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight they hurt. I'd wanted the truth, but now the truth felt like a weapon, one that could destroy not just my marriage, but the entire Caldwell dynasty. The question was, did I have the courage to pull the trigger? Vivian's house felt different in the rain. The Georgian mansion I'd visited countless times for family brunches now loomed like something from a Gothic novel. I almost turned around when I saw Eleanor's car in the circular drive. Inside, voices drifted from Vivian's study. I recognized Eleanor's precise tone, then Vivian's sharper reply. She deserves to know. Know what? I asked from the doorway. They turned, startled. Eleanor's face was ashen, missing its usual perfect makeup. Vivian sat behind her desk, holding what looked like an old photograph. Harper! Eleanor smoothed her skirt, recovering quickly. This is a private family matter. I'm family. The words tasted bitter. Or have you forgotten that while planning your son's secret meetings with Celeste? Eleanor's eyes widened. Vivian made a sound between a laugh and a sigh. Well, Vivian said, that saves us some explanation. She held out the photograph. Though not all of it. Picture was old, yellowed at the edges. In it, a younger Eleanor stood with a man who wasn't Ethan's father. They were both beaming at a baby in Eleanor's arms. That's not Richard, I said, meaning Ethan's father. Who? My first love, Eleanor said quietly. And Celeste's father. The room tilted. I gripped the back of a chair. Ethan doesn't know, Vivian added. Neither does Celeste. Their father died before either was born. My voice failed. Ethan and Celeste are half-siblings. Eleanor's voice cracked. I gave her up for adoption. It was what everyone expected back then. Unmarried mother, prominent family. My phone buzzed, another text from Jack. Found adoption records. Call immediately. Does Ethan know? I asked, already knowing the answer. About the money? The blackmail. Eleanor's face hardened. Blackmail? What are you talking about? I pulled up the financial records on my phone, hands shaking as I showed them. $2 million 4 years ago. More payments starting 3 months ago. Your son has been embezzling from the foundation to pay her off. Vivian stood so quickly her chair toppled. That's impossible. I handle all the foundation's accounts. Not the private trust, I said. The one Richard set up for Ethan before he died. Eleanor sank into a chair, her aristocratic posture crumbling. Oh God. She must have found out somehow. The adoption records. But Ethan's payments started recently, I pressed. Why would he? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. Where are you? We need to talk. I found something in your email. I shot through my veins. I'd left my laptop open at home, logged into the email where Jack had sent everything. I have to go. I turned, but Vivian caught my arm. Harper, wait. There's more you need to know about Celeste. About what really happened 4 years ago. Let her go, Eleanor said, her voice hollow. She's already decided what kind of story this is. Haven't you, dear? The wealthy family's dark secret. The faithless husband. De perfecte. I pulled away from Vivian's grip. You're wrong. This stopped being about revenge the moment I saw that photograph. Now it's about survival. Rain pounded against the windows as I drove home, my mind racing. Siblings. The word echoed like a curse. Did they know? Was that why Ethan had been paying her? Or was there something even darker hidden in the Caldwell family's perfect facade? My phone kept buzzing. Ethan. Jack. Vivian. I ignored them all. Because now I understood what I had to do. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. It was about protecting Ethan, from Celeste, from his mother's lies, and maybe even from himself. But first, I had to get home before he finished reading those emails. The lights were on in our townhouse when I pulled up. Through the window, I could see Ethan pacing in his study, phone pressed to his ear. I took a deep breath and reached for the door handle. Time to find out what kind of story this really was. The front door felt heavier than usual as I pushed it open. Ethan stood in his study doorway, my laptop open on his desk behind him. His face held an expression I'd never seen before, something between rage and fear. "Were you ever going to tell me?" His voice was deadly quiet. "About Celeste?" I stepped inside, keeping my distance. "Were you?" He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "About hiring a private investigator. About digging through my family's history. About," he stopped, running a hand through his hair. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know everything, Ethan. About the payments, about Eleanor, about—" "Stop." He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing my arm. "You need to listen very carefully. Celeste is dangerous. The money wasn't for what you think. Let go of me." I twisted free, backing toward the door. "She's your sister, Ethan. Your half-sister." All the color drained from his face. "What?" My phone buzzed, Jack again. I ignored it. "Eleanor told me everything. The adoption, the cover-up." "No." Finn shook his head. "No, that's not. Celeste isn't my sister. She's Richard's daughter." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "From his first marriage. The one nobody talks about." His laugh was bitter now. "Mother didn't give her up, his first wife did. When she found out he was leaving her for Mother." My phone kept buzzing. Finally, I answered. "Jack, not now." "Harper, get out of there." Jack's voice was urgent. "Celeste just left Eleanor's house. She had a gun." The front door burst open before I could respond. Celeste stood there, mascara running down her cheeks, looking nothing like the polished woman from the hotel. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you?" She wasn't looking at me, but at Ethan. Had to play the noble brother, protecting everyone's secrets. "Celeste, don't," Ethan started. "Shut up." She pulled the gun from her purse. "Tell her. Tell your perfect little wife what really happened 4 years ago." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Ethan, I found out what Father did," he said quietly. "How he'd paid off Celeste's mother to disappear with her. How he'd erased all trace of his first family to marry Mother. I tried to make it right. By paying me off." Celeste's hand shook. "By making me disappear just like he did?" "By protecting you," Ethan shouted. "Richard was still alive then. If he'd known you'd discovered the truth." "Det truth?" She laughed wildly. "The truth is, you're just like him. Throwing money at problems until they go away." "Well, I won't go away this time. Everything happened at once." Celeste raised the gun. Finn lunged forward. I screamed. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Finn stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. Celeste stared at the gun like she'd never seen it before. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh Gott, die dient man." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard the shot. Celeste turned and ran, leaving the gun on the floor. I knelt beside Ethan, pressing my hands against his wound. "Stay still. Help is coming." "Harper." His voice was weak. "I'm sorry. I thought I could fix everything without anyone getting hurt. Like father, like son," I said bitterly. He caught my wrist with his good hand. "The money. It wasn't just payments. I was helping her build a new life, away from all this. I couldn't tell anyone, not even you. If Mother had found out about Richard's first marriage while he was alive." The sirens grew closer. Through the window, I saw Eleanor's car screech to a halt outside. In the chaos that followed, paramedics, police, Eleanor's hysteria, I felt strangely calm, 'cause I finally understood. There are no heroes or villains in family stories. Just people trying to protect the ones they love, usually in all the wrong ways. Question was, what would protecting myself look like now? The hospital waiting room felt like limbo. 3 hours had passed since they'd taken Ethan into surgery, and still no word. Eleanor paced while Vivian watched her with tired eyes. I sat apart from them, clutching my phone, waiting for news about Celeste. Jack's text came just after midnight. Found her. 4 seasons. Same room as before. I stood up. Eleanor's head snapped toward me. Where are you going? To finish this. Harper, Vivian warned. Let the police handle it. The police don't know what we know. I grabbed my coat. About Richard. About any of it. Eleanor blocked my path. You've done enough damage. Me. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. You built this house of lies, Eleanor. All of you. I just lived in it. The 4 Seasons lobby was deserted when I arrived. The night clerk recognized me from my previous visit, his eyes widening. Room 742, I said. Call the police in 10 minutes. The elevator ride felt endless. When I reached her door, I didn't knock. I had Ethan's key card, the one that had started all this. Celeste sat on the bed, still in her blood-stained clothes. The room reeked of whiskey. Come to arrest me? Her voice was hollow. No. I closed the door. I came to understand. Understand what? How it feels to be erased. She took another drink. To watch your father build a perfect new family while pretending you never existed? Ethan tried to help you. Help me. She stood, swaying slightly. He paid me to stay quiet. Just like Richard did with my mother. The Caldwell solution. Throw money at the problem until it goes away. Then why come back? Because I wanted them to see me. The glass shattered against the wall. Really see me. Not as some dirty secret, but as family. By threatening Ethan? By shooting him. I never meant. She sank back onto the bed. I just wanted to belong somewhere. Footsteps in the hallway. Vivian's voice. Harper? Are you in there? I opened the door. Vivian entered, followed by Eleanor. The 3 Caldwell women, facing their prodigal daughter. Hello, Mother, Celeste said to Eleanor. Or should I say stepmother? Eleanor flinched. I didn't know. About you, about Richard's first marriage. Not until after he died. But Ethan knew, Vivian added quietly. He found the papers in Richard's study. Started tracking you down. To protect you, I corrected. From Eleanor finding out while Richard was alive. From the scandal destroying both families. And now, Celeste looked at Eleanor. Now that everyone knows? Sirens wailed in the distance. Eleanor straightened, every inch the Caldwell matriarch. Now we stop hiding. All of us. Ethan's out of surgery, Vivian said. He's asking for both of you. Celeste's eyes met mine. Why would he want to see me? Because he's the only one who never saw you as a secret. Held out my hand. He saw you as family. The sirens grew closer. Celeste stared at my outstretched hand, tears cutting through her mascara. I can't take it back, she whispered. Any of it. No, Eleanor said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. But we can go forward. Together. When the police arrived, they found 4 women sitting quietly in a hotel room, telling the truth for the first time in decades. The whole truth about Richard, about the money, about a family built on secrets and shame. Later, as dawn broke over Boston, I sat by Ethan's hospital bed, watching him sleep. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. You okay? I thought about revenge, about justice, about the thin line between protecting and destroying the ones we love. About how sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't exposing the truth, but choosing what to do with it once it's exposed. No, I texted back. But I will be. We all will be. 6 months can change everything. The Boston winter had melted into spring, and I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the morning light. On my coffee table lay the final divorce papers, waiting for my signature. My phone buzzed, a text from Celeste. Coffee? The usual place. These meetings had become our strange ritual over the past few months, ever since she'd finished her court-mandated therapy. The charges had been reduced after Ethan refused to testify against her. Another Caldwell family solution, but maybe this time the right one. Lardison was quiet when I arrived. Celeste sat at our regular table, 2 lattes waiting. She looked different now, softer somehow, without the sharp edges of revenge to hold her together. Eleanor asked about you at the foundation meeting, she said as I sat down. She misses you in her Eleanor way. How's that going? Working with her. Surprisingly well. Turns out we're both good at organizing charity galas. She smiled faintly, though she still corrects my table settings. The foundation had been Eleanor's idea, transforming the private trust into a scholarship fund for children of broken families. A way to turn decades of secrets into something healing. And Ethan? Better. Physical therapy's helping. He's talking about moving to New York, starting fresh. She hesitated. He asks about you too. I touched the manila envelope in my bag containing the divorce papers. I know. He called yesterday. Are you going to sign? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Jack. Got the job. Starting Monday at the new agency. Thanks for the reference. Life's funny, I said, showing Celeste the message. A year ago, I hired Jack to expose your family's secrets. Now he's working for your security firm. Our family, she corrected gently. Whether you sign those papers or not. The bell above the door chimed. Vivian walked in, spotting us immediately. She'd been the bridge between all the broken pieces, somehow knowing exactly when to push and when to let things heal on their own. I hoped I'd find you both here, she said, sitting down. Eleanor's planning a summer party at the house. Proper one with both families invited. All the families. I thought about the past 6 months, the therapy sessions, the careful reconstructions of truth from lies, the slow building of something new from the ashes of what we'd burned down. I should go, I said, standing. I have some papers to sign. Harper. Celeste caught my hand. Whatever you decide. Thank you. For showing us there's more than one way to be family. At home, I opened the divorce papers again. Behind them was another envelope, the one Ethan had left at my door last week. Inside was a single photograph, all of us at Christmas, even Celeste's mother, who Eleanor had finally tracked down. We looked messy, imperfect, real. On the back, Ethan had written, "Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means holding on differently." I picked up my pen, understanding finally that this wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. The Caldwell family would always be part of my story, not as the perfect facade I'd married into, but as the beautifully flawed reality we'd all discovered together. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Eleanor. The foundation board meeting is Thursday. Your seat is still empty. I looked at the divorce papers, then at the Christmas photo. Sometimes the hardest part isn't choosing between right and wrong, but finding the courage to choose both, to let go of what was while holding space for what could be. I picked up my pen and began to write not just my name, but my own ending. Or maybe it was a beginning. With families like ours, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference.
The text arrived during a client meeting, lighting up my phone with its silent accusation. I tried to focus on the marketing pitch, but my eyes kept drifting to the screen, to that single photo that threatened everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Alara, your thoughts on the campaign direction? Marcus, our creative director, was staring at me expectantly.
Sorry, yes.
The concept is solid, but we need stronger visuals for the third quarter push. I gripped my pen tighter, forcing myself to stay present. The image wouldn't leave my mind. Alden and Marlo, his arm around her waist, her head tilted up toward him with that familiar, adoring look I used to see directed at me. The caption beneath it was worse. Family secrets. After the meeting, I locked myself in my office and finally allowed myself to really look at the photo. They were standing outside some cafe I didn't recognize, caught in what could be an innocent moment between siblings. But something in their body language, the intimacy of their stance, made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed again. Alden. Hey, running late tonight. Marlo needs help with some insurance paperwork for Derek's estate. Of course she did. Ever since her husband's death 6 months ago, Marlo had needed help with everything. No problem, I replied, keeping it light. When should I expect you? Not sure. Don't wait up. I stared at the message, remembering all the late nights over the past months, all the times I'd woken up to an empty bed. The excuses had seemed reasonable. Marlo was grieving, struggling with 2 young kids, drowning in paperwork. She needed her brother. But now, my office door opened, and Iris poked her head in. Lunch? You look like you could use a break. She must have read something in my expression because she stepped inside and closed the door. What's wrong? I handed her my phone, watched her face as she studied the photo. Who sent this? Anonymous number, blocked when I tried to call back. It could be nothing, Iris said carefully. They're siblings. Look at his hand on her waist. Look at how she's looking at him. The words came out sharper than I intended. That's not how siblings look at each other. Have you talked to Alden? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. He's with her right now. Insurance paperwork, apparently. Iris set the phone down and leaned forward. Then go home early. Surprise them. See what's really going on. The suggestion sent a jolt through me. It was so simple, so obvious, and yet the thought of what I might find made me hesitate. What if? What if nothing? You need to know, Alara. This isn't going away. She was right. I gathered my things, made an excuse about a migraine to my team, and left the office. The drive home felt surreal, like I was watching someone else navigate through traffic, someone else's hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Our house came into view, the perfect colonial we'd bought 3 years ago, with its manicured lawn and welcoming front porch. Alden's car wasn't in the driveway, but Marlo's silver SUV was parked on the street. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, watching the house where my life was supposed to be perfect. Then my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. They're at the Blue Door Cafe. Thought you should know. I put the car in drive, my decision made. Sometimes knowing the truth is better than living with doubt, even if that truth destroys everything you thought you knew about love and family. The Blue Door Cafe wasn't what I expected. No dim lighting or secluded corners, just a bright, airy space filled with afternoon sunlight. I spotted them immediately through the window, sitting at a corner table. Nothing inappropriate, just 2 people talking over coffee. But then Marlo reached across and squeezed Alden's hand, and my world tilted sideways. My phone buzzed. Cora Winslow's name flashed on the screen. Alara, dear. We're coming for dinner tonight. Alden mentioned Marlo's moving in with you both, and we want to help get everything settled. I watched through the window as Alden wiped something from Marlo's cheek with his thumb. Tonight's not great, Cora. I have a work emergency. Nonsense. Family comes first. We'll be there at 6. The line went dead before I could protest. I gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to storm into the cafe. Instead, I drove home, my mind racing with possibilities of what to do next. 3 hours later, our dining room had become a war room. Cora orchestrated the chaos, directing movers with Marlo's furniture while Everett and Alden assembled a bunk bed upstairs for Marlo's kids. The guest room's perfect for them, Marlo said, arranging photos on the mantel. All Winslow family pictures, none including me. It's so generous of you both. I stood in my own living room, feeling like an intruder. When exactly was this decided? Oh, Alden didn't tell you? Marlo's eyes widened with practiced innocence. He said you discussed it last week. Must have slipped his mind. I forced a smile, noting how she'd already changed into comfortable clothes, like she belonged here. Cora swept in, carrying a casserole. Alara, dear, could you set the table? Marlo needs to rest. She's had such a difficult time lately. I bit back a response and headed to the kitchen. Through the doorway, I could hear them talking. She's taking it harder than expected, Marlo whispered. She'll adjust, Cora replied. Family has to stick together in times like these. I slammed the drawer shut harder than necessary, making them jump. Dinner's ready. I called up the stairs, my voice eerily calm. During dinner, I watched them all, the way they passed dishes, finished each other's sentences, shared inside jokes. A perfect family portrait, with me sitting just outside the frame. We should discuss the sleeping arrangements, Cora announced. The kids will need structure. Actually, I cut in. I thought we should discuss how long this arrangement will last. The table went silent. Alden shot me a warning look. Alara, he said quietly, we talked about this.
Did we?
Because I remember a very different conversation about helping Marlo find her own place. Marlo's lower lip trembled. I can look for apartments tomorrow. No, you won't, Cora interjected. This is your home now. Isn't it, Alden? I watched my husband's face, waiting for him to defend our marriage, our space, our life together. Instead, he reached for Marlo's hand. Of course it is. As long as you need. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I found Alden in his study. You never asked me, I said. You just decided. They're my family, Alara. What was I supposed to do? And what am I? He wouldn't meet my eyes. It's temporary. Just until she gets back on her feet. I thought about the cafe, about the photos on the mantle, about all the little ways I was being erased from my own home. How long have you been making decisions without me? He finally looked up, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then Marlo's voice called from upstairs. Alden, the kids are asking for you, and whatever moment of truth we might have had vanished as he hurried to answer her call. The bank statement arrived on a Tuesday, buried under a pile of junk mail. I almost missed it, but the bold red, alert, balance below minimum caught my eye. Scanning the transactions, my coffee grew cold beside me as the numbers told their own story. 5 transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Each one for exactly $5,000. Morning. Marlo breezed into the kitchen wearing my favorite silk robe, the one Alden had given me for our anniversary. Is there coffee left? I slid the statement into my laptop bag. Help yourself. Nice robe. Oh, Alden said I could borrow it. You don't mind, do you? She poured herself coffee in my mother's old mug, the last thing I had of hers. The front door opened, and Alden walked in from his morning run. Hey, you're both up early. He kissed Marlo's cheek first, then mine, like an afterthought. We need to talk, I said, about the accounts. His expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. Can it wait? I have an early meeting. $25,000, Alden. Were you planning to mention it? Marlo quietly slipped out of the kitchen, taking my mother's mug with her. It's temporary, he said, not meeting my eyes. Marlo needed help with Derek's medical bills, and the insurance hasn't come through yet. Our savings, Alden. Our future. You didn't even discuss it with me. Because you would have said no. His voice rose. She's family. She needed help. And what am I? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Upstairs, I could hear Marlo's kids laughing, the sound of their footsteps on what used to be my home office floor. I'll pay it back, he finally said. Once everything settled. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Check account ending in 4891. It's not just medical bills. What else aren't you telling me? I showed him the text. His face drained of color. Someone's trying to cause trouble. You shouldn't listen to. Then show me. I held out my hand. Show me your phone. Prove there's nothing else. He took a step back, clutching his phone tighter. I don't have to prove anything. This is my family we're talking about. And our marriage? What are we talking about there? Before he could answer, Marlo appeared in the doorway, wearing a new designer dress I'd never seen before. Alden, we're going to be late for the appointment. What appointment? I asked. Just helping her look at some properties, he said quickly. Too quickly. In a dress that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. Marlowe's face flushed. It was a gift. From Alden. To help me feel better after. Everything. The room spun slightly. I steadied myself against the counter, remembering all the times I'd asked Alden about our dwindling savings. All his vague explanations about market fluctuations and temporary setbacks. I have to go, he said, already backing away. We'll talk tonight. Will we? Or will Marlowe need something else that's more important? He paused at the door, and for a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Then Marlowe touched his arm, and whatever he might have said disappeared into the morning air as they left together. I sat down at the kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of what used to be my life, my home, my savings, my marriage. The anonymous texter had been right about everything so far. What else would they reveal? My fingers hovered over the phone, ready to reply to the unknown number. Sometimes I thought the real betrayal isn't in the secrets they keep, but in the truth they force you to face. I typed, "Tell me everything." The response from my anonymous informant came with attachments, bank statements, text messages, photos. Each one a nail in the coffin of my marriage. I stared at my laptop screen in my office, trying to make sense of it all, when Marcus knocked on my door. "The Henderson pitch is starting." He paused, noticing my expression. "Everything okay?" I closed the laptop. "Fine. Just family stuff." Family stuff doesn't usually make people look like they've seen a ghost. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with Cora's name. I let it go to voicemail, but she called again immediately. "You need to come home," she said when I finally answered. "Marlowe's having a crisis, and Alden says you're not being supportive enough." I caught my reflection in the office window. Pale, drawn, unrecognizable. "I'm at work, Cora. Some of us still have jobs to maintain." That's exactly the kind of attitude I'm talking about. Family comes first, does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like only certain family members matter. The silence on her end was telling. Finally, she said, "We're having a family meeting tonight. Don't disappoint Alden again." I walked into the pitch meeting late, my mind spinning with numbers from the bank statements. A joint account I never knew about. Regular transfers dating back months before Derek's death. A lease agreement with both their names on it. Alara? Marcus was staring at me expectantly. The campaign strategy? I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood up abruptly. "I need to handle something. Personal emergency." The drive home felt surreal. The house was full when I arrived, Cora arranging flowers in the kitchen, Everett watching TV with Marlowe's kids. Marlowe herself curled up on my spot on the couch. "No Alden. Where is he?" I asked. Marlowe looked up, her eyes red. "He's picking up dinner. I had another panic attack, and he's been so wonderful." "Stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop." Cora appeared in the doorway. "Alara, really. Show some compassion." I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd received. Like the compassion they showed when they signed a lease together 3 months ago. The room went silent. Marlowe's face drained of color. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, but her hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "The apartment on Cedar Street. The joint account. The transfers that started long before Derek died." Each word fell like a stone between us. "Want to explain that compassion to me?" Cora moved to stand between us. "Whatever you think you know." The front door opened, and Alden walked in carrying takeout bags. He froze when he saw my expression, the phone in my hand. "We need to talk," I said. "Not now," he replied quickly. "Marlowe needs." Marlowe always needs something, doesn't she? And you're always there to provide it. With our money. Our future. He set the bags down slowly. "You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain the apartment. Explain why you've been lying to me for months." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Marlowe made a small, choked sound and fled upstairs. Cora followed, shooting me a venomous look. Alden's face hardened. "You're making assumptions." "No." I cut him off. I'm finally seeing clearly. The question is, what happens now? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing me, I realized, but fear of what I might do with the truth. We should discuss this privately, he said quietly. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Nothing in this house has been private since she moved in. Why start now? The restaurant buzzed with celebration as waiters brought out Marlowe's birthday cake. I watched from my seat, numb, as Alden stood to make his speech. My wine glass was empty again, third time tonight. To my amazing sister, he raised his glass, who deserves every happiness. Which is why. He pulled out a small box, wrapped in silver paper. This is just a small token of our love. Our savings. Our life together, dissolving like sugar in bitter coffee. Marlowe's squeal of delight as she opened the box made heads turn at nearby tables. Inside lay a key fob with a familiar logo. You didn't, she gasped. It's parked outside. Alden beamed. The SUV you've been eyeing. Safe for the kids. Perfect for your new start. Cora wiped away tears. So thoughtful, darling. Isn't it wonderful, Elara? I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Wonderful? Is that what we're calling it? Elara, Alden warned quietly. Not here. Why not here? Everyone else seems to know our financial situations better than I do. I turned to Marlowe. Did you know that car cost more than what's left in our savings? The savings your brother's been draining for months. The restaurant grew quieter. Everett cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this at home. Like we discussed the apartment lease? Or the joint account? My voice was steady, surprising even me. Or should we talk about the real reason Derek's life insurance hasn't paid out yet? Marlowe's face went white. Alden stepped toward me, but I held up my hand. Don't pretend you're protecting me anymore. You're making a scene, Cora hissed. Think of the family. Family? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. Let me tell you about family. Family doesn't drain their brother's marriage dry. Family doesn't manipulate and lie and… That's enough. Alden's fist hit the table, making the glasses jump. You're drunk. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I said quietly. You've done that for me quite thoroughly. I reached into my purse and pulled out the stack of bank statements, letting them fall across the cake. Happy birthday, Marlowe. Hope the car was worth it. As I walked toward the door, I heard Marlowe start to cry, those perfect, practiced sobs that always brought Alden running. But this time, I heard footsteps behind me. Where are you going? Alden grabbed my arm. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. You're overreacting. If you'd just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been planning this for months. How you and Marlowe. She needed help. After everything with Derek. Derek's insurance claim was denied because of suspicious circumstances. I cut in. Did you know that? Did you help her with that too? His face changed, just for a second, but it was enough. In that moment, I saw everything I needed to know. Elara, please. He reached for me again. Come home. We can talk about this. Home. I stepped back. That house stopped being my home the moment you chose her over me. Over us. Through the restaurant window, I could see Marlowe being consoled by Cora, both of them shooting glances my way. The perfect victims in their perfect family drama. My phone buzzed, another message from my anonymous informant. There's more. When you're ready to know everything. I looked back at Alden, standing there with his hand still outstretched, and realized something. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others hurt. It's about finally allowing yourself to walk away. Goodbye, Alden, I said, and stepped into the night air, leaving behind the remains of a birthday cake and a marriage built on lies. Iris's spare bedroom felt like a confessional in the pre-dawn hours. I sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through the latest messages from my anonymous informant. Police reports. Insurance investigations. Derek's death wasn't the tragic accident everyone believed. My phone lit up with Alden's 20th call of the night. I silenced it, but not before seeing his text. Don't do anything stupid. Please. Too late for that. I'd already contacted Derek's insurance investigator. Iris appeared in the doorway with coffee. You look like hell. Thanks. I took the mug, avoiding her concerned gaze. Did you know there was a life insurance policy on me too? She sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. What? Taken out 6 months ago. Alden's the beneficiary. I showed her the document on my laptop, right around the time Marlo started spending more time at our house. That doesn't mean. Derek's brake lines were tampered with, Iris. The police report was buried, but it's there. The silence stretched between us, broken only by another buzz from my phone. This time it was Marlo. Please come home. We can explain everything. Iris read the message over my shoulder. Maybe you should hear them out.
Why?
So they can spin more lies. I stood up, pacing the small room. I've already contacted a lawyer. She's meeting me this morning. Alara. A sharp knock at the front door cut her off. Through the window, I saw Cora's car in the driveway. Don't answer it, I whispered. But Cora's voice carried through the door. Alara, we know you're there. This has gone far enough. Iris squeezed my hand and went to answer. I heard their voices in the hallway, getting closer. She's being ridiculous, Cora was saying. These wild accusations. Are they wild? I stepped into the hallway. The apartment lease? The drained accounts? The life insurance policies? Cora's face hardened. You don't understand our family. No, I understood too late. That's different. Marlo needs protection. After what happened with Derek. What had happened with Derek, Cora? Because the police report suggests it wasn't an accident. The color drained from her face. For the first time, I saw fear replace her usual certainty. You need to stop this investigation, she said quietly. For everyone's sake. Or what? She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Or these photos of you and Marcus from the Henderson account meeting go to the board of directors. My stomach dropped. The photos were innocent, just us working late, but framed exactly wrong. Career-destroying wrong. You're blackmailing me? I'm protecting my family. She set the envelope on the side table. Come home. Stop the investigation. Or tomorrow, these go public. After she left, Iris picked up the envelope. We can explain these. Can we? In this industry? With these clients? I sank against the wall. They've thought of everything. My phone buzzed again, the anonymous informant. Time running out. Meet me at Riverside Park, 1 p.m. You'll want to hear this. Don't go, Iris said. It's not worth it. But I was already grabbing my keys. Because here's the thing about hitting bottom. Sometimes you find there's another level lower, waiting to show you just how far you can fall. I have to know, I told her. Even if it destroys me. And if it does? I thought about Alden's betrayal, Marlo's manipulation, Cora's threats. Then at least I'll go down knowing the truth. And maybe, I touched the police report on my laptop. Maybe I can get justice for Derek too. Sometimes revenge isn't about winning. Sometimes it's about being willing to lose everything to expose the truth. Riverside Park was empty except for a familiar figure on a bench, Marlo, alone, clutching a manila envelope. No anonymous informant, just another manipulation. I almost turned around, but she called out, Derek knew. Those 2 words stopped me cold. I approached slowly, keeping distance between us. Knew what? About Alden and me. About everything. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. He was going to expose us. So you killed him? No. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I loved Derek, but Alden couldn't let him ruin everything. The world tilted sideways. What are you saying? I didn't know what he was planning. I swear. She pulled out a stack of papers. Derek left these for me. Insurance documents, bank records, everything. He knew Alden was embezzling from his company, using my accounts to hide the money. A jogger passed by, reminding me we were in public. Why tell me this now? Because Alden's planning the same thing for you. She handed me the papers. The life insurance policy, the fake photos with your coworker. He's going to destroy you, just like he destroyed Derek. And you're just now growing a conscience? I'm scared, Alara. Her voice cracked. For my kids. For myself. Alden's not who I thought he was. Who any of us thought he was. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind us. We both turned to see Alden approaching, his face a mask of controlled rage. I should have known you'd crack, he said to Marlo. You always were the weak link. It's over, Alden, I said, standing. I'm taking these to the police. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. With what proof? A grieving widow's desperate stories? Photos that could easily be explained as a sister seeking comfort from her brother. Derek's evidence is circumstantial at best. And who will believe you after those photos of you and Marcus go public? Your career will be ruined. Your reputation destroyed. Like you destroyed Derek? His smile faltered. Derek was an accident. Was it? Marlo stood, her voice stronger now. Tell that to the mechanic who saw you the day before. Alden's composure cracked. You followed me? I followed Derek's instructions. She pulled out her phone, played a video. Alden's voice filled the air, arguing with Derek about missing money, making threats. You recorded everything, I whispered. Delete it. Alden stepped forward, reaching for the phone. Now. It's already with my lawyer, I said. And the insurance investigators. They're reopening Derek's case. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your email. The investigator should have contacted you by now. He pulled out his phone, his face draining of color as he read. When he looked up, the controlled mask was gone, replaced by something darker. I did everything for this family, he snarled. Everything. And you both betray me like this. No, Alden, I said quietly. You betrayed us. All of us. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marlo's hand found mine, squeezing tight. They're coming for you, she told her brother. It's over. Alden looked between us, his perfect world crumbling. You'll regret this, he said, but his voice shook. Both of you. As the police cars pulled up, I watched my husband raise his hands in surrender. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. Marlo turned to me, her eyes full of tears and determination. I'm sorry. For everything. I know, I said, watching Alden being handcuffed. So am I. 6 months after Alden's arrest, I stood in our old house one last time, packing the last boxes before the sale closed. Sunlight streamed through windows that no longer held family photos, casting shadows across empty walls that once witnessed so many lies. My phone buzzed, a text from Marlo. Coffee? The kids miss their Aunt Alara. These monthly meetings had become our way of healing, of understanding. Not forgiveness exactly, but something closer to acceptance. I typed back. Usual place noon? The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Cora standing there, looking older than I remembered. The realtor said you'd be here today, she said softly. May I come in? I stepped aside, watching her take in the empty rooms. She touched the wall where Marlo's photos once hung, where my life had begun to unravel. Alden wants to see you, she said finally. Before the sentencing. I know. He's written letters. Have you read them? No. I closed a box, sealing it with tape. Some things are better left unsaid. She pulled an envelope from her purse. He confessed everything. About Derek, the money, all of it. He's accepting a plea deal. That doesn't change anything. No, she agreed, surprising me. But maybe this will. She handed me the envelope. Marlo showed us the truth. About how we enabled him, how we chose not to see. Inside was a cashier's check, the exact amount Alden had taken from our savings. I don't want your money. It's not ours. It's Derek's life insurance payout. It belongs to his children. Her voice cracked. We were so wrong, Alara. About everything. The front door opened again, and Marlo stepped in with her kids. They ran to me, hugging my legs, while she hung back uncertainly. Mom, she said to Cora, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm leaving. Cora moved toward the door, then paused. I'm sorry, Alara, for not being the family you deserved. After she left, Marlo helped me load the last boxes into my car. The kids played in the empty living room, their laughter echoing off bare walls. I got a job offer, she said. In Seattle. A fresh start. That's good. I meant it. The kids will love it there. What about you? What's next? I looked at the house that had held so many versions of myself. Wife, daughter-in-law, victim, survivor. I'm staying. This is my home, my city. I won't let what happened change that. And Alden's request? Will you see him? I thought about his letters, still unopened in my desk, about revenge and justice, and how sometimes they look different than you expect. Some wounds don't need closure, I said. They just need time to heal. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Thank you for helping me find my strength, for showing me another way. The kids came running out, asking about ice cream. We laughed, a genuine sound that felt like victory. Later, alone in my new apartment, I finally opened one of Alden's letters. His words spilled across the page. Explanations, apologies, pleas for understanding. But what caught my eye was the last line. I thought I was protecting everyone, but in the end, you were the only one strong enough to save us all. I folded the letter and watched the sunset paint the city gold. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in rebuilding something stronger from the ruins. Sometimes justice looks like moving forward while letting the past fade into shadow. My phone buzzed again, another text from Marlo. Thank you for showing me what real family looks like. I smiled, thinking of ice cream with her kids, of healing wounds and new beginnings. Some family ties are chosen, forged in truth rather than blood. Those are the ones that last.